Hi everyone, I'm Kim Williams. First of all, I'd like to thank BottleWorks for inviting me to exhibit during their NatureWorks event this year. I named my exhibit, All Creatures Great and Small. It's a line from a hymn that I used to sing as a little girl, and it really embodies the essence of the exhibit of all of God's creatures, and that's what really inspires me. Today we're going to be talking a little bit about some of my inspirations behind each of these pieces, and we'll also talk a little bit about some of the techniques that I use to create them. So at that, let's take a gallery walk. My first piece here is called Gemini. I saw this twin fawn and his sibling underneath my hemlock tree last June. They must have just been born, as their legs were so long and wobbly and their bodies were really tiny. I wanted to keep this piece very light in the background. I had just completed two other pieces that were intricate and darker in the background, and because summer was coming, I wanted to keep this nice and light. I used fern stencils. I picked ferns from my yard and some leaves from my yard and created a sort of a stencil out of that. It's just to give the background some texture and some interest. This piece is a 12 by 24 acrylic on canvas. And the twin piece that I did do his twin, and it's a 12 by 12 piece, and it's living at a little gallery in Ligonier called G Squared. So moving on. This is my Leicester long wool sheep from Underhill Farms in Hollidaysburg. I added a couple pieces of leaves, olive leaves, that a friend brought back from the Holy Land for me a couple years ago. And it kind of told the story here of this peaceful lamb. Moving back to the aviary section, I use a lot of ephemera on my pieces. Maybe some wire, papers. I collect papers, interesting papers, and I've used those papers here to enhance this piece. I previously had her roaming free, but I put a little cage around her to protect her from some of the other animals in the exhibit. I also used gold metal leaf on the eggs that she's dreaming about. The next piece here is called No Egrets, and my funny friend helped me to name this piece. I typically go out into my kayak and find these interesting wildlife scenes. This egret was previously very elusive. This is up at Glendale Lake at Prince Gallitzin State Park. I finally got a chance to watch her for a while she fished. I think it was about 20 minutes that she allowed me to stay there and just watch her, observe her. The late afternoon sun that created the yellow scene behind the shadows of the green leaves in the front it was just so inspiring to me. And she was so much fun to watch. I waited until the wind picked her feathers up a little bit to recreate this particular scene. A few years ago, I was looking for some new inspiration, and down at my garden, I saw this fat little sparrow fly, just struggling to get to the top of the garden fence. And it really inspired this middle painting to begin with. I gave the little sparrow a friend and some lunch here. It was a little ladybug. And I had so much fun creating that piece that I wanted to expand it. And I gave them some more friends and expanded the fence a little bit. I had asked my husband to create some of these birch frames for the exhibition here at Bottle Works, and I thought that was pretty fun. They were pretty cool. The next piece I'm going to show you is, the name of it is Balance. It's the rooster part. This is a triptych, as well as the sparrows were a triptych. But this triptych was a little bit different. I had exhibited it at SAMA, Southern Alleghenies Museum of Art in Loretto, at their biennial this past fall, as a 3-piece triptych. And I chose for this exhibit to separate them. You'll see the other 2 pieces momentarily. But this is a 12 by 24 piece pheasant, acrylic on canvas, but it's mixed media as well. It has strips of paper to indicate some of the lighter pieces of grass, and also has actual pheasant feathers placed on the canvas. The other 2 pieces, the hen and the nest that you'll be seeing in a little bit, also have those particular ephemera pieces on them as well. So last fall, I was at an exhibit, awards exhibit at Latrobe Art Center for the Mr. Fred Rogers art exhibit. And I noticed in their window a huge drawing of a housefly, and I found it so inspiring that I immediately started thinking about what I could create that would inspire, that would have inspired. So I remembered a gecko that I had taken a photograph of a few weeks earlier, and I thought, this is going to be perfect. Well, it was going to be perfect until I got home and saw these 2 mourning doves on my deck. And I just loved the feathers that were puffed out on this male. And it created such a challenge for me to try to recreate that scene as a pencil drawing. I called this Late Afternoon Doves because mourning doves was just too depressing during a pandemic. So I have 3 very talented granddaughters, but the 7-year-old had created this painting of a peacock, and I thought that it would be fun to put on a t-shirt and show it during the aviary section of our gallery walk. Now, these are the other 2 pieces I was referring to. This is the hen, and then this is the nest. And you can see that they have little pheasant feathers on them, and the papers reflecting the other rooster painting. The last piece that I want to talk about in the aviary section is named Bob Bob Bobbin. This little stinker woke me up at 5:30 every morning last spring. He was tapping on his reflection in my bedroom window. So the darker areas here, this is another piece of ephemera, but it's used to tell the story of, these are blinds that I had opened up to view the little robin that wanted his friend to go away in my window. So moving back to the kayak, this is this is my happy place. This is where I find most of my inspirations out in the lake. I just love being out here because, as I wrote here in where the logo would typically be, it is well with my soul. Almost always, I get my inspirations on my own. I am out in nature. I am taking photographs. I am experiencing these things. But now, a few years ago, my friend had come back from sailboat races in Duxbury, Massachusetts, and she shared these photographs of that event, and I was just so inspired and really wanted to try to start capturing water in a better way. So I asked if I could use her inspirations, her photographs, to recreate some of these sailboat pieces. Well, this area is a little different. It's only prints. All these paintings have sold, and so I like them so much, I wanted to have some prints made. And these are all giclée prints, and they have archival ink and archival papers that the printing company uses to create these things. Here you can see a deckled edge, and most of these do have the deckled edge. It's kind of interesting to lay that added texture onto a mat. So these pieces come either matted and framed or just by themselves as just the prints, and then you can have them matted and framed on your own. Now that's just laying on top of the mat, but this piece down here is a traditional matting where the print is behind the mat. I've had some magnets made for the exhibit and some greeting cards. Well, actually, they're note cards. They are blank inside, and they're done on really nice paper. A few years ago, I was at the little garden area on Chestnut Street by BottleWorks, and I created this piece especially for this BottleWorks exhibit. It's called BottleWorks Bee. And whenever I was sitting there, the echinacea coneflowers were blooming. I just love the pink, purple colors on these flowers. And then the orange area up here where the pollen is. And the bees were buzzing and just having a great old time. It was a really beautiful morning. I also used some beads to represent a little bit of a texture there where the top of the flowers are. Now this section is my cow pen. I have this relationship with farm animals. I know where they're ending up, but I just love their, just how gentle, especially cows are, these gentle beasts. One day we were coming back from the lake and went past this cool little farm in Patton. And we saw a herd of cows that were just the cleanest cows, and they were so cool that I got out of the car and I walked over to the fence, and the girls came over to greet me. It was just the coolest thing. And then I looked up and I saw a sign right by the logo of the farm, which was 3 stars, and that's what these represent, that said freezer beef. So I knew where they were ending up, but I can't help myself. I just have to paint these beautiful creatures. And this is a print of a piece that I had done, Eating His Words. Typically on my farm animals, if they have tags, I like to do something extra with the tag. This one says, "Hello, my name is," and then 23 was the actual number on the tag that this Pinzgauer was wearing. And this is named Beefsteak Browned, and that's in reference to a recipe that I found in my 1950s Betty Crocker cookbook. I kind of want you to think where your food is coming from. This piece had won 2 awards, one in the Mr. Fred Rogers Fine Arts exhibit last fall at Latrobe Art Center, and the other was last spring at the Allied Artists Spring Show, Allied Artists of Johnstown Spring Show. The next piece I'd like to talk about is Birdhouse Bandits. This is another fine example of a photograph from another artist that I had seen, and I asked her if I could use that as a reference for this painting, and she so graciously agreed to that. Again, here I used some leaves, paper leaves, and other pieces to kind of enhance the thing. Also, whenever I first saw this, I just knew that these little babies, that there was nothing good to be had with them being on that birdhouse. It was trouble all the way. This is an example of just being still, just sitting still and letting the wildlife come to you. This is snack time. I think the only thing that I enjoy painting more than cows is dogs. I've done so many commission pieces, and I'm just finishing up one now. These pieces weren't done as commission pieces. They were for the installation pieces that I've created in the past few years. Barkley here was an interesting piece because it took me a while to figure out what colors to mix to recreate that Weimaraner fur color. It's so unusual, and that was a fun piece to do. And Dixie's my Florida dog. She's a rescue. And Libby over here's my North Carolina dog. Now I've done some vegetables and fruits, flowers, but my real heart lies with the creatures in the exhibit. The next piece I'd like to show you is Quiet Time. This was a beautiful morning on a stream. This catch and release fisherman had caught this awesome trout, and this was done as a commission, and he really enjoys having this on his wall now because he let the incredible fish go. The lure that he used, he allowed me to attach that to the painting. And there's a little piece of fine fishing line here. And then the stronger fly line is around the outside. Promises Kept here. This comes from a few years ago. I was out with some friends and made the mistake of ordering a drink that came with a straw. And we just don't do that because we want to protect all the turtles and all the sea life where these straws typically end up. So after being admonished, they said that I needed to create a piece of art, and I think that what this turned out to be was a lot of fun. It was a good project. So right here you can see some of the pieces of plastic straw in the bottle here and on the gauze and on the wire. And that just is a reminder to folks to be more responsible with the wildlife that we've been put in charge of. Now, these two pieces were a lot of fun. I really wanted to try to do some drawings or paintings on newsprint. So I attached the newsprint to the canvases, so I have my gallery wrap areas here to paint extra pieces on. And I like to use papers that you cannot read the word. I mean, if you're German, yes, you can read that. That comes from an old German Bible storybook from the 1800s. The other one has French paper on it, but it's used more as a design element instead of a message. So the newt here, I found him whenever I was raking leaves in the fall, and right down where the leaves are really wet is typically where I find them, so I'm typically very careful to try not to hurt them at all. So we typically have a nice conversation, and then I move them someplace where they're going to be safe. So on a trip to the Outer Banks a few years ago, I found this piece of old rusty wire, and I'm so grateful to my friends that they don't ask me why I'm picking up old rusty wire. They know it's my inspiration, and they just let me do my thing. And whenever I needed a tail of sorts for this newt, I was so excited to remember that I had that, and it just fit perfectly. And see, the gecko did end up in the show after all, but as a painting and not as a drawing. The section over here is my bug area. Bugs do inspire me, not all bugs, but moths and butterflies and dragonflies especially. A friend of mine and I were out photographing flowers the one day, and she's a photographer, she's really good. But we came across a fresh hatching of cicadas. And that's really unusual. I've not seen these cicadas freshly hatched. And of course, the first thing I had to do was come home and paint the big red-eyed bug that we found that day. I don't know if I did ever paint any flowers from that session. Some neighbor friends of mine had given me this old farmhouse window that they were getting rid of. So I stripped the lead paint from it and repainted it and then redistressed it, adding little pieces of numbers and things like that had been scratched into the window to begin with, just to try to recreate that. And also I had to add a stink bug since we're in Western Pennsylvania. Comes complete. This piece had been hanging in my dining room for a while, and it caught me a couple times thinking of that, oh no, a stink bug got in the house. So the last area that I want to talk to you guys about is this wall. In 2018, I did an exhibit in Grand Rapids, Michigan, with 138 pieces put together as one larger piece, and it was called Peace Like a River. Now this piece that you're going to be seeing here is only 65 pieces in this collection. But as you can see, whenever we turn around here, if we're standing back here, you can see that your eye with the colors meshes the colors together and creates a new scene. So the heron is the larger 20 by 20 canvas, kind of below the middle on the left-hand side. And then you can see the dark area in the front, braced by the girl's face up, and that's the large foreground wing. And then the back wing on the other side is where the little acorns are, and it goes off to where the branches end the wing on that side. On the left-hand side is the colors kind of mesh together to indicate water. On the right-hand side, they indicate the right bank of the river. So that's why I've named this Peace Like a River, Right Bank, because it's only half of that original exhibition. Whenever I'm visiting beaches especially, I like to collect the shells, and I also like to have a little collection. I bag up sand from particular beaches as well, so I know where the shells and the sand have come from the same place. And then on some of these pieces you'll see, if you look closely, where I have made numbers out of that sand or letters or attached that sand in some way. And the wire where the shells are hanging from here is also a piece of the wire that was on the newt that we saw a little bit earlier. Each one of these paintings represents some peaceful moment to me. And that's why I was able to use these in this Peace Like a River collection. Most of them are 8x8 gallery wrapped pieces. This is a 20x20, and then we have a few 4x4 pieces as well. This is my beautiful niece, and her face anchors the back of the wing here, but also is looking out to where the other wing is going to. This piece here, whenever I was out, again, in my kayak, I noticed all these water lilies, but they didn't have flowers on them, and I wasn't sure how the piece would turn out, but the strings were what really caught my eye, just watching them all flowing down through the water to where they got to the bottom, and then you couldn't see them anymore. They just kind of faded off into the distance, and I just really loved that moment in time. One of the last pieces I want to show you on the wall here is a painted turtle. I was so entranced with the reflection of this turtle that it was almost exactly the same as the actual turtle. At one point I couldn't tell whether up was down or down was up. It was very interesting to sit and observe him for a while. He was very gracious to let me be there. The first painted turtle I had ever done, the painting, I was named Buttons. So now every painted turtle I do has to, in my mind, has to have a button attached to him. I could talk about these pieces all day. I have stories and inspirations behind each one of them, but we have a time constraint here. So I want to encourage everyone to come down to the Bottle Works, safely wearing a mask, and come visit the exhibition. It's really a great space, and it's a great time. If you'd like to contact me, you can contact me either through the Bottle Works or through KimWilliamsFineArt.com. And thank you very much for having me show you around my gallery.